Welcome to another tutorial. My name is Atenas, this is Mode Bespoke, and for today I'm going to be teaching you how to crochet a Tunisian braid. So let's get started. So the Tunisian braid that we're going to be crocheting today is going to be made up of 3 sections. So we will do slightly more complicated ones later, but today's only has 3. If you haven't watched last week's tutorial where we did just a cable that has the 2 sections, give that a watch and then practice that stitch a little bit so that you get really comfortable with it before trying the braid. So I'll link the cable video up here on the screen, so go check that out. Now, we're going to be needing 2 hooks for today's tutorial, so they don't have to be the same size. One is the one you're going to crochet with, the other one you're going to use as just an aid. So let's begin with a chain of 18 stitches. You're just going to start with a slip knot, and then we chain 18. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, and 18. So we've got our chain. Now we have to work a foundation row. So this is going to be a 6-row repeat, and we're going to start the foundation row, and then we're going to do 4 rows, and then after that we start our 9-row repeat. So I'll explain this a little bit more as we move along. So let's begin here first with the foundation row. So we have to do our first cast on, and we're going to work that in the 2nd stitch of our chain. So insert your hook into the 2nd stitch of the chain, yarn over, and pull up a loop. So this is the same way you're going to cast on into every single stitch of the chain. And once you've cast on, we're going to work a return pass, and this is just a standard return pass. So you're going to just work yarn over, pull through 1, and then yarn over, pull through 2. So yarn over, pull through 1 stitch, and then yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, until you are left with just 1 loop on your hook. And now that your foundation row is set up, we can begin with the first of the 4, bottom rows. So these are going to be just a little bit of a border to just kind of help keep your edges nice and neat. So these don't count into the 6-row repeat. So the first row is just going to set up the foundation for our braid. So we're going to begin with 2 purl stitches, then we're going to follow it up with 12 knit stitch, and then 2 purl, and then just a knit stitch here on the last stitch of the row. So let's get started. We're going to work a purl stitch into the 2nd vertical stitch of the row, and then the purl stitch in the stitch after that, and then we're going to work 12 knit stitches. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. There we go. And then we work 2 purl stitches. So we have 1 and 2. And we finish the row by crocheting a knit stitch on this final stitch. And I like to go through both loops here. And once you're all cast on, you just work a regular return pass. So yarn over, pull through 1, and then yarn over, pull through 2 until you're left with just 1 loop on your hook. And you're going to work a regular return pass in every row. So that way we don't have to review that every time. And now once we have finished this first row, we're going to repeat this another 3 times so that you have a total of 4 rows. So it's the 2 purl, 12 knit, 2 purl, and then just 1 knit at the end of the row. So complete 3 more repetitions of this row so that you have 4 complete rows just like this. And now we begin the first row of our 6-row repeat. So you're going to begin with 2 purl stitches. And this is just going to create a little side border for us. So we're always going to begin with the 2 purl stitches. So there's 1 and then 2, And then we're going to skip the first 4 knit stitches. So we're going to skip stitch 1 through 4, and we're going to go into stitch number 5. And we're going to knit stitch in the next 4 stitches. So into stitch 5, and then make sure you pull this a little bit long so you have a little bit of room to work with. So there you go, and there we go. So you work a knit stitch between stitches 5 through 9, and now you're going to need your second hook so that we can work the stitches that we skipped. So grab that second hook, and you're going to cast on your knit stitches onto the new hook, so onto the blue hook. You're just going to insert your hook just like you would a regular knit stitch, yarn over, and cast on. So there's one. And you want a lot of slack here, so make sure you pull up the loop so that you have a lot of space to work with. So here we go, 2, and then 3, and then we're going to cast on one more for that 4th stitch that we skipped. And now we want to pull all of these stitches from the blue hook onto the silver hook, so onto the back hook that we're working with. So let me try to get close here so you can see it. So you're just going to insert your hook through all of these loops. And once all of the loops are on your working hook, you can remove that extra hook. And now before you continue, these last stitches are going to be really, really loose. So make sure you tighten those. And this is right before you move on to the next part. And that's just going to clean up the braid a little bit more. So now we still have 4 remaining knit stitches, and you're just going to work a knit stitch into each of those remaining stitches. There you go. And now we finish the 2 purls at the end of the row. And then the last stitch, which is a knit stitch. And then you just complete a return pass. So now here we are at the end, and this is what our work looks like so far. So it's kind of messy, but we're going to clean this up. So now we're going to work 2 repetitions of row 1. So we begin with the 2 purl stitches, and then we're going to knit one into every stitch. And you're just going to work these stitches as they approach your hook. So the easiest way to do this, if you haven't tried this before, you're going to separate the stitches. So you have the set of 4 in the back and then the set of 4 in the front. So here you can see the first stitch right here in the back. So what I do is I just separate the stitches out. So just insert your finger into the space you have between the stitches, and you're going to see the 4 stitches in the front and then these 4 stitches back here. So because the back stitches are the ones closest to our hook, we're going to work a knit stitch into those 4 stitches first. So you might have to move your work around a little bit so that you can see them. So I'm going to try to crochet these, just kind of pull on these a bit, see if you can see them while I work on these. But we're going to cast on the 4 knit stitches that are closest to our hook, so they are the back stitches. And then once we've got those on the hook, we're going to work on the 4 knit stitches right here in front. So we've got 1, oh, if I can get the stitch, there we go, let's try that again. There we go. 3 and then 4. And you have 4 remaining stitches, so we have to knit stitch those remaining 4. And then we finish the row with the 2 purl stitches and the last knit stitch. So purl, purl, and then knit. And now complete a return pass. So once you're done with this return pass, complete 1 more repetition of row 1. At this point, it will be a lot easier to see the stitches. So we've already gone through once, we've pulled the stitches down a little bit, so you'll be able to clearly see all of those knit stitches and just work all the way across. So repeat row 1 one more time, and then we will do the second crossover stitch. So here we go. I've done my second repetition of row 1, and we're ready for the second part of the braid. So I'll show you here on our little sample. So we've just completed this side of the braid, and now we have to complete this other side. So we have to start the actual braiding part of it, and this is where it gets a little complicated. So we do begin with our first 2 purl stitches, and then we're going to work 4 knit stitches. So the first 4 knit, and we're going to skip the second set of 4. So we knit into these 4. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we're going to skip that second set of 4. So these 4 stitches, we're going to have to pull them behind that last set of 4. So skip these, go into the next set of 4, and then just crochet a knit stitch into each of those. So here we go. So it's 1, 2, 3, and 4. And you're going to need your hook again, so you're going to need that second hook. And now we're going to cast on the stitches onto that blue hook again. But unlike that last braided part, we have to knit these stitches behind our working hook. So you have to push your stitches behind whatever hook you're currently using. So for me, it's the silver hook. And you have to knit these behind the hook in order to pull that section of the braid behind the last set of 4 stitches. So if you just kind of pull your hook down, so if you pull the silver hook down and then try to cast on with the 4 skip stitches just a little bit higher than your hook, it makes it a little easier to see. So as you cast on, remember to pull on your yarn just to give yourself a little bit of slack. So this will make transferring the stitches from the blue hook to the silver hook a lot easier. So now, once you have all of your 4 stitches cast on, we have to switch them onto the silver hook. And then we continue the rest of the row, and you'll be able to see the braid a lot more cleanly after that. So let's transfer these over. So I'm just going to line up my 2 hooks and then pull the silver hook through all 4 loops that are on the blue hook. So it's a little bit difficult to see on the camera, but there you go. So once you've pulled them through the silver hook, you can remove the blue hook, and we can finish the row. So now we have left our remaining purl stitches. So we have 2 purls and then just the last knit stitch of the row. And there you go. And now you just complete a return pass. And once you've got that done, you can start to see the beginning of the braid. So after this, it just becomes a lot of repetition. So it gets really, really easy after this point. But we're going to repeat 2 repetitions of row 1. So we're going to work purl stitch, and then 12 knit stitches. So just go straight across until you get to this knotted mess here. This one is going to be the opposite of what we did last time. So now the front stitches are closer to your hook. So here I'm just going to try to pull these apart. So see, these front stitches are now closer to our hook. So we're going to crochet these first. And then we will cast on the stitches in the back. So see, and they're kind of hidden back here. So you may have to move your work around a little bit to see them. So cast on the 4 front stitches. And then cast on the 4 stitches that are back here. So pull on your work a little bit until you can see the knit stitches, and then cast those on. There you go. And once everything's on your hook, you just finish the last 2 purl stitches and then the last knit stitch. So that was 1 repetition of row 1. So work a return pass, and then work a second repetition of row 1. So we've completed 2 repetitions of row 1, and now all you have left to do for the pattern is to repeat row 5 through this last row that we did. So it's 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and row 10. So then just repeat those rows as many times as you need to complete the length of braid that you want. So now for the bind off, because you will still need a bind off, once you have completed that 2 repetitions of row 1, so you're going to be left with spacing that looks like this, you're going to complete that bind off at that point. So for the bind off, I just use a single crochet bind off, and it's just single crochet as a knit stitch. So here, I'll show you what that looks like. So we're going to do the same single crochet in all of these stitches. Go into that first purl stitch of the row, and you're going to insert your hook in between both threads of the stitch, just like you would a knit stitch. Yarn over and pull up a loop. And then you're going to close this like a single crochet. So you're going to yarn over and pull through both of the loops. And that's it. So we'll do this again. Go into the next purl stitch and then just pull up a loop. Yarn over and single crochet. And then it's a lot easier for the knit stitches because you just would pull up a loop like you would a knit stitch. And just continue to single crochet in every one of the stitches until you've worked 1 stitch per every stitch of the row. And this does include that very last stitch. So the very last knit stitch, don't forget that stitch as well. So let me work through these really quickly, and then I'll show you what that looks like. And what this is going to do is it's going to close off those top stitches, and it's also going to create a nice little even border like the one that you have at the very bottom of our work, so what you created with that foundation row. So here we go. Once you've completed that, see this top row? It looks a lot nicer than what we had before, and it kind of matches this bottom row, and there you go. So once you've completed a little sample, you're going to notice that you have these little dimples right there. These are caused just by the size of our sample. So we only worked with 18 stitches, but if you're going to be making something big like an Afghan or a sweater or anything like that, you're going to have more stitches along the sides. So you're not going to have these little dimples here along the edges of the sample. And also when you wash your pattern, your work for the first time, whether it's an Afghan or a sweater, whatever it is, it will loosen up your stitches. So the braid will lay a little bit more flat, and it'll be a lot easier to see. But other than that, I mean, that's all there's to it. Just practice the stitch a few times, practice it with different yarns, and maybe a little bit of a different tension and different hook sizes, and just see what works for you. But that is our tutorial for today. So if you have any questions or comments, leave them down in the comment section below. If you need the written instructions for this, it is available on the website. So go check that out. I'll leave a link in the description box. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, hit the subscribe button. I post videos every week. And if you want to see any more of my work, follow me on Instagram. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and share the video, and I will see you again in the next tutorial.